All into session, if you will. The January 11th, 2021 City of Tualatin Council work session. Welcome new members, Kristen and Cindy. We're all looking forward to working with you over the next 2 years. And we'll have more formal introductions at our formal council meeting when the world will be watching versus just a handful of folks right now. So first thing we have is, of course, we have to hear from our city attorney, Sean Brady, first thing to start a new year to make sure we don't mess up. And he will lead us in a discussion of public meetings. Good evening, Sean.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Let me share my screen here. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Great. So yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Sean Brady, City Attorney. And before I get started, I just want to acknowledge your dedication and frankly, your courage to serve as citizen legislators. It is very easy to be an observer in a democracy. It's very much more difficult to actually be a person to be the one to make those decisions. And I just want to thank you for your dedication and service to the community and frankly to democracy as a whole. What you're doing is very special and you should be proud of what you're doing. With that, I just want to start by beginning here today to talk about public meetings. And this is just an overview of what we'll discuss today. We'll start by talking about kind of what is a public meeting, then get into the different types of public meetings, the requirements of the public meetings laws. We'll talk a little bit about serial meetings, and then finally conclude with some tips on how to avoid violations. Now, the public meetings law is what's known as a sunshine law. So it's a right to know law. And what that means is that as the policy states, the goal is to provide government to have an informed public aware of the deliberations and decisions of governing bodies and the information upon which they make those decisions. Now, the courts interpret the coverage of the law broadly and the exceptions narrowly. And what that means is if there's on balance, the tipping point is going to go towards having an open and public meeting. And again, so the public meetings law, as I said, is a right to know law or an information law. It's not a public participation law. The council has the stage, so there's no right for the public to speak. There's no right for the public to require a public hearing on items. It is under the Oregon Public Meetings Law, it's only a right to essentially watch the performance and also to see the playbill or the agenda. But otherwise, it's the council's stage. Now, there are some other statutes that do require public participation in hearings, and those include state budget law as well as some land use law that require public hearings or public participation. And then in the council rules, there is a provision that allows public comment on certain items during the agenda. However, that is not required of the public meetings law. That's separate. Now, what is a public meeting? So the public meetings law is a convening of the governing body of a public body for which a quorum is required in order to make a decision or to deliberate towards a decision on any matter. Now, all of those kind of underlying pieces we will get to in the next few slides here and break those down as to what those mean. So first, what is a governing body? So the governing body is the council. It's also going to be the Tualatin Development Commission, which you all serve on as well. And then it's also going to apply to advisory bodies. Those include advisory bodies that are established by ordinance, such as the ARB, TLAC, TPark, the Planning Commission, the Arts Committee. All of those advisory bodies that are established by ordinance also must follow public meetings laws. It also applies to any council subcommittee. So right now there's a council committee on advisory appointments. That council subcommittee is required to follow the public meetings laws. And then any ad hoc subcommittees that the council may create. So they, at any point in time, the council may send off less than a quorum to go investigate or consider different policies and report back to the council. And when that happens, that ad hoc subcommittee is also subject to the public meetings law. Now, the public meetings laws do not apply to advisory bodies of the city manager or departments, and they also do not apply to any advisory bodies where the individual members of the advisory body give their recommendations as opposed to a group recommendation. So that's one kind of loophole or piece of the law that allows for individual members to go out, and if they report back as individuals, then that is not subject to the public meetings laws. So the next item we'll look at is, what is a quorum? So a quorum is really just the number of members present that are needed for the governing body to conduct its business. Now, in Tualatin, under the charter, a quorum is by definition 3 councilors and the mayor or the mayor pro tem. Pro tem just being Latin for temporary. Now, under the council charter, there is the position of the council president, which serves when the mayor is absent. And however, if both the mayor is absent as well as the council president is absent, under Council Rule 1D, it allows for the councilors to appoint a mayor pro tem to lead that meeting for just that one meeting. So all this to say, for purposes of a quorum, under public meetings law, it is 4 members of the council. Now, the next element of public meetings law is a decision or a deliberation. So a decision or deliberation is the making of a decision, considering policies, considering facts, wrestling with those decisions. So this would include things like adopting an ordinance or resolution, passing a budget, conducting hearings on any matter, appointing boards and commissioners to your advisory bodies, considering policies, and then even work sessions are considered subject to the public meetings law, as well as goal setting retreats if you're talking about city business. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the items one of the items that the public meetings law does not apply to is when, one of the items that is that this does not prohibit additional items from being placed on the agenda. So, for instance, even though the agenda may have only 2 items, that does not prevent the council from taking up more items. So just the fact that it's not on the agenda does not mean that the council cannot deliberate or decide on that matter. Now, one kind of side note here is information gathering. So you may go to some trainings or other public meetings trainings, and you may hear that the public meetings law, that the public meetings law does not apply to information gatherings. And I would just caution on that a bit. So information gatherings, when that information is used to make a decision or even a future decision, that would be subject to the public meetings laws. So for instance, work sessions are usually where the council gathers that information and wrestles with some of that information gathering. And however, it would also apply to informal information gatherings if a quorum went out and started to gather information on which they want to use that to make a decision. And again, the public meetings law policy states that the information upon which such decisions are made are subject to the public meetings law. Now, the courts have distinguished between information gathering and deliberations. However, there's not really a bright line rule as to what constitutes deliberations and what constitutes information gathering that can be done without calling a public meeting. Additionally, there is a clear case that says that public meetings law applies to information gathering in a work session. And then since the inception of the public meetings laws, the Attorney General opinions, as well as the current edition of the Public Meetings Manual, all state that information gathering is subject to the law. Now, this is kind of a gray area, and it can change as the case law proceeds, but at this point in time, I would just be cautious of that. And then lastly, the public meetings apply to deliberations or decisions on any matter. And any matter is any city business, anything within the city's jurisdiction, or anything the governing body can decide or even recommend. So that can be anything from the adoption of an ordinance to even something minor as deciding to put an op-ed in as a council into the newspaper. Now, there are certain things that are not public meetings by statute. This includes any on-site inspections. It includes social gatherings, and it also includes attendance at national, regional, or state association meetings. So if you go to an NLC conference and you all attend, that is lawful. You would not, that's not a public meeting. However, if you decided to, on the side, start discussing city business, then that's where some issues arise. Now, there are generally 3 types of public meetings. The first is just a regular meeting. So these are the second and fourth Monday of every month. That would also include work sessions under regular meetings. The second type is executive sessions. And then the third type is special meetings. These are meetings that are called outside of the normal meeting schedule. And they can be either regular meetings or they can be executive session meetings. And then a subset of special meetings includes emergency meetings. Now we'll talk about all the public meetings requirements that apply to all of those types of meetings. And then we'll get into some discussion about some differences with executive session as well as special meetings. So the public meetings requirements, and again, the first one does not apply to executive sessions, but it has to be open to the public. So the meeting itself has to be open. And then the second is that the notice must be provided, and that includes the agenda. So the agenda must be posted in a public place, and then it's also sent to the media who request to be on our list of interested parties. The agenda itself must state the time and place of the meeting, and then list the principal subjects that are anticipated to be considered by the public body. Now, again, that does not limit what the council can consider. It just outlines what the council is anticipated to consider. Additional topics can be added at the meeting, and it's not a violation to add those. And then lastly, the notice itself must be provided at least 24 hours in advance. And then there's an emergency exception that applies to certain emergencies. Now, the next series of requirements is the meeting itself must be in an accessible location. It has to be within the city, a non-discriminatory site. It has to be ADA accessible. Now, if there's a joint meeting between the city council and another council, then it's allowed to be at either one of those cities. Or if it's a county, it could be, if for whatever reason the city was having a joint meeting with Deschutes County, then the city can have a city council meeting in Deschutes County. And then the minutes are another requirement. They can be either written, they can be audio recorded, video recorded, or digitally taken. However, they must include, regardless of what method is taken, they must include the members present, all motions, ordinances, resolutions that are considered by the council, the results of all votes that are taken, as well as the vote of each member of council by name in the minutes, the substance of any discussions, and then if there are documents that were referenced during the meeting, those documents must be referenced in the meeting minutes themselves. So the next big category of meetings is executive session meetings. And for the notice itself, the executive session can be called separately for an executive session or during a meeting. So even if the executive session was not, there was no mention of an executive session in the agenda, during a meeting, the council can recess into an executive session, and that's allowed. However, the statutory basis, regardless of which way the council decides to go into executive session, the statutory basis has to be made, as well as the subsection of the ORS that allows for executive sessions must be cited. So that can be in the notice if it's noticed as a separate meeting, or it's announced during the meeting if it's during a meeting itself. Now, during executive sessions, there's no public attendance at those meetings. However, the news media is allowed to attend, except for two categories. One is labor negotiations, and then the second is if for whatever reason the news organization itself was a party to litigation, and that's the reason for the executive session. Now, one key component of executive sessions is final action cannot be taken by the council in executive session. So any matter that's discussed in executive session, in order to make a final decision on that, the council must come out into open session to make that decision. And then I referenced the statutory basis. There is one ORS 192-660, and then there's some administrative rules that govern executive sessions. Now, there are specific reasons for executive sessions, and these are those statutory reasons that the council must either announce or put in the notice. So one is the initial employment of any public officer, employee, or agent. And there's some specific requirements that have to be met before that. For instance, the vacancy has to be advertised. There's a regular hiring procedure adopted, and there's an allowance for public comment on that. Another reason is for discipline or complaints of any public officer, staff, or agent. The council can meet in executive session, as well as to assess the performance of a chief executive, officers, employees, or staff, unless that person about which the executive session is being held requests that meeting be held in an open meeting. So the person whose performance you're appraising has the option to have that meeting in an open session as to opposed to executive session. Now, one key component is that you cannot discuss compensation in executive session, and that's by Oregon administrative rule, as well as there's an AG opinion about that. And this is can trip counselors up. And in fact, a couple years ago in the city, there was a city that had violated this, and the Oregon Government Ethics Commission found a violation against that city for discussing compensation in executive session. So that's one area that kind of can trip up council in this employment reason. Now, the next reason is labor negotiations. So the council can meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with those entities or agents that are designated by the governing body to negotiate for the governing body. The council can also meet in executive session to confer with legal counsel. So this includes litigation or litigation likely to be filed, as well as attorney-client communications. Now, you won't find attorney-client communications in the executive session statute itself. It's actually under information and records exempt from public law, from public inspection. And so that's the basis for that. And under Oregon Evidence Code, that attorney-client communications are privileged and therefore cannot be disclosed. Another category is real estate transactions. So the council can meet in executive session to discuss with the person designated to negotiate for the council any type of real estate transaction. And then lastly, again, I mentioned this a little bit, but any type of exempt public records. So there's a lot of exempt public records, multiple hundreds of statutes that deal with public records. And so if one of those, for instance, attorney-client fits within that, then the council can meet in executive session to review that record and consider information related to it. Now, the executive sessions are governed by certain statutes and administrative rules, and they're investigated by the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. One key component is attendance alone at the executive session is enough to find a violation. So even if you're just sitting there and not participating, the fact that you're attending an executive session, and if a violation occurs, that can be enough to find a complaint sustained by the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. And there are certain common violations. These include discussing topics that are not authorized by law to be discussed in executive session. Deficient minutes is another key category, and those are the two most common violations of the executive session statutes. So we'll get into a little bit about special meetings. So special meetings under the charter They may be called by the mayor alone, 3 or more councilors, or the consent of all members. And again, a special meeting is just a meeting that's called outside of the already scheduled normal meeting schedule. And so what happens if you violate the public meetings law? What's the consequences of that? So under the statute, a negligent decision is considered voidable. So that means the court could void the decision, but it doesn't necessarily have to. There is an opportunity to cure. So for instance, if the council, and just to give you an example, there was a city that had revoked its participation in an intergovernmental agreement. It did not do that. It was not placed on the agenda and no discussion of that occurred. The plaintiff in that matter had sued, claiming a violation of the public meetings law. So in order to cure that violation, what the governing body did is reconvene, reconsidered that, and then voted in public session to withdraw from that intergovernmental agreement. And so that was a lawful cure of that alleged violation. Now, the court shall void, meaning it has no discretion, if it finds there was an intentional disregard for the law or a willful misconduct by a quorum, unless other equitable relief is available. And again, persons who participated in an illegal meeting are jointly and severally liable for any amounts paid by the public body. So that I'll get into the facts a little bit later, but there's a particular case out of Lane County. And in that case, there was a violation that was alleged and found, and the case is called Dumdy versus, is the name of the case. And it was a circuit court case. To settle the case, Lane County paid $300,000, and then each commissioner had to pay $20,000 personally to settle that case. And again, if those amounts are paid out, then the public body can go after the individual counselors for reimbursement of those. In addition, there's attorney fees that are available to the successful plaintiff. And then there's injunctive and declaratory relief, meaning that there can be just an order to comply or do other things that the court may order. And then for executive session violations, the Oregon Government Ethics Commission can impose civil penalties. And then separate from public meetings laws, in certain circumstances, there may be some constitutional issues related to due process that could also come into play. So now we're going to talk about serial meetings. So a serial meeting is simply a meeting of a quorum of a governing body by communicating in a sequential manner. So not everyone together, but one after another, kind of like the game of telephone. So one counselor tells one counselor, and then it's passed along and so on, so forth. And there are 2 cases that talk about sequential or serial communications and serial meetings. And one I mentioned is Dumdy v. Handy, and the other one is Handy versus Lane County. And so the facts of Dumdy, and this was a circuit court case, were that there are 2 members of the Lane County Commission that wanted to secure funding for their staff through a supplemental budget. And they did not want to present this in the public. And so what they did is they discussed it separately outside of the public meetings, outside of a notice public meeting. And they're in Lane County, at the time they had 3 counselors, and so 2 counselors discussed it. They exchanged emails, they had in-person communications. And what the court found was that these were orchestrated to avoid having to discuss this in a public session. And by doing so, they violated the public meetings laws by having a serial meeting outside of the normal process. And the court found that serial communications constitute a public meeting under Oregon's public meetings law, and that this was willful misconduct by the 2 commissioners involved. And again, to settle it, Lane County paid $300,000, and each commissioner paid $20,000. Now, related to this is Handy versus Lane County, and in that case, Handy was one of those former commissioners and sought contributions to a political committee for settlement of the Dundee case. A letter was sent to the DA that claimed this was a violation of law, and the media made a public record request of that letter. Now, the county executive then met with met with the commissioners and had a discussion as to whether or not to call a public meeting, and then second, whether or not to release the letter. And this went up to the Court of Appeals and then eventually to the Oregon Supreme Court. Now, the Court of Appeals decided that the calling of a decision whether or not to call a meeting was not a public meetings violation, but the decision of whether or not to release the letter was a violation. And so that is where the Court of Appeals held. That then was appealed to the Oregon Supreme Court, and the Oregon Supreme Court decided to assume without deciding that it was a violation, but then remanded the case back to the lower court for additional discovery and additional facts. So the basis for serial meetings and for the courts holding that these violate the public meetings law is two sections for the most part in the public meetings law, and that is that all meetings of a governing body shall be open to the public, and also that a quorum of a governing body may not meet in private for the purpose of deciding on or deliberating toward a decision. So what do we know after these decisions by the courts? Well, we know there's no clear line as to what constitutes a public meeting violation through serial communications. The Court of Appeals and the Circuit Court held that these types of communications do violate public meetings law. The Supreme Court just assumed without deciding that it was a violation. So it's not clear what actually constitutes, however, but the closer in time those communications will be, the more likely it is it's going to be found to be a violation. But in the end, if a quorum meets outside of the public meeting to deliberate, it's going to be found to be a violation of the public meetings law. So again, there's certain risks with serial meetings, and it's going to be factually dependent. So again, the closer in time, the higher the risk. And then the courts are going to look at what's the intent. Was the intent to avoid having a public debate about the topic? If so, then the likelihood is that the council or that the court is going to find a violation of the serial meetings or public meetings law. So in the end, you risk a violation if 4 or more counselors are involved in a series of communications about a common topic of city business. So if there are 4 or more of you and you're not noticing that or discussing that at a public meeting, you should be concerned. So we'll get through a couple just hypotheticals or scenarios, so to see what you think of these. So in this first scenario, and these are all based on real life situations, the city published notice of an executive session, and that notice states that the purpose of the meeting is training. So is this a lawful executive session or lawful notice? And so the answer is no. So it was not a lawful notice. And the reason is that the notice does not state the statutory basis for an executive session. Additionally, training is not one of those statutory bases. So in this case, that notice would be unlawful, and any meeting for this purpose would be a violation of the public meetings law and subject to the Oregon Government Ethics Commission investigation. So another scenario, there was a lawsuit filed about a slip and fall on a sidewalk. The executive session was noticed for litigation or litigation likely to occur, and the proper subsection was provided. At the meeting, the counselors discussed the lawsuit with the city attorney, and at the end of the meeting, the councils discussed whether or not they should amend an ordinance to change the responsibility for sidewalks. So the question is, was this a lawful meeting, and was this lawful topics? So yes, it was a lawful meeting. The meeting itself was properly noticed, litigation or litigation likely to occur. The proper subsection was cited. They followed the topic all the way up until the end. And then that last piece where the counselors discussed an amendment to an ordinance. So that is a piece that's not a proper subject for executive session. So up until that point in time, everything was lawful. At that end of the meeting, that was an unlawful subject to be discussed. So the last scenario is one council member of a 7-member council issues a press statement that the process used to select applicants for the Planning Commission was unfair. So 2 councilors were upset about this and decided to approach the mayor. The mayor asked those 2 councilors to draft a media release and circulate it to all the rest of the councilors. Those councilors did that. They circulated the draft and then decided on final language and then issued that press release to the media. Now, in this scenario, again, there is a quorum, so there's more than 4 meeting together. They discussed something that was outside of the public meetings law. It was a matter of city business that they were responding to within the jurisdiction. And so in this case, it was a violation of the public meetings law to do this. So lastly, some tips on how to avoid public meetings violations. So first, do not discuss city business with a quorum unless it's during a public meeting. So that's a simple one. Again, avoid serial communications of a majority of council if you're communicating about a common topic of city business. So this could be in person, it could be telephonic, it could be electronic, emails, text, whatever, or it could be through an intermediary. Any of those means is a serial communication and should be avoided if you're doing it with a quorum. Less than a quorum, it's not a public meeting, it's no problem. And then lastly is just a reminder to stay on topic during executive session. So that's probably one of the areas that's easy to slip into, is to wander off topic, but that is important to stay on topic during executive session. So that is the end of my presentation.
Thanks, Sean. Can you pop? Thank you. So if anyone has a question, go ahead and raise your hand and I'll let you know that it's your turn. I see Valerie's hand up first.
Something new. Oh, well, now you've scared us all. Thanks, Sean, but we have you there to help us. I had 2 questions. So during the executive session, you said we could have labor negotiations, but then earlier you said something about not discussing wages and salaries. So I'm just trying to define where that line is. We can say we want, if I'm understanding correctly, we could say we would like X% increase, but we can't talk about specific wages. Is that the defining?
So that's actually two separate provisions of the public meetings law for executive session. So the one relating to cannot discuss salary in executive session relates to individual employees and employment. It doesn't relate to labor negotiations. So
Okay.
Labor negotiations, you can discuss what they're offering and you can discuss what percentage increase to make.
Okay, great. And then my second one has to do with the emails. Like, so if we go to meetings, some might be within the city, like a committee, and then some might be like the mayor goes to a lot of meetings with other mayors or whatever. And are we allowed to, which of those can we communicate via email, just bullet points of what happened at that meeting? Not necessarily opinions, just bullet points of what happened.
Right. So those type of things are okay to communicate. You're just communicating information. And as long as it's not going to be used, for instance, you have an item that you're going to decide based upon that information. That's where the gray area comes in, as to whether or not, you're going to take that information and then use it to decide on an ordinance or use it to decide on something else. But just communicating general information is okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other questions for Sean? Maria.
Since now we're all working from home, and at times it's a bit difficult, especially when you have the executive meetings. What are your, because we have family members and people. So what are your suggestions on how we can maintain that as private as possible? And are there any best practices that we can review for those kinds of meetings that are approved by you, since you're an attorney and can review that. Because I think it would be very important for us to understand that in this era that we're all in different parts of the, the city. And I can imagine someone that has children or lives in an, thankfully I have my own room, my own office. But if someone wants to run for office that has a large family, probably lives in a 1-bedroom apartment and things like that, I mean, I think we have to think about those. How can people be more private in those, and what is the city doing, or how we can support that?
Yeah, I think for executive sessions, we would definitely want to, the council want to be in a position where you're either wearing headphones or something of that nature, so that, and somebody can't see your screen, or be in a private location where you don't have others that can listen in. There is definitely, risk there, but it's up to each of the, especially here, it's up to each individual counselor to ensure that others don't see what's in those executive sessions. I will say too, in executive sessions, I would advise not to communicate with the media or somebody else about what occurs in the executive session. That can waive that privilege. So and allow for the news to report on some topics that were discussed in executive session. So it's important that the council doesn't, enter an executive session and then have counselors go out and disclose what was discussed, unless it's going to be part of an open meeting.
That was a good question, Maria. Headsets might be super important if it's something people can overhear. That's a good idea. Other questions? Well, I've got two. One is, can you, Sean, explain there's some rules that we have in our council rules that augment some of the meetings law, as far as, for example, bringing something up at a city council meeting, asking for it to be added to the agenda. I guess basically, explaining how the two overlap.
Right. So the public meetings law is kind of the baseline, and so we must comply with that. And then as far as the council rules themselves, those would be in addition to the public meetings law. And so, for instance, if the council wants to add, and I don't know if you want me to talk about the specifics of adding an item.
It just matter, we got two sources to go to. Look at, like you're saying, the public meetings law, but also make sure to review your council rules.
Correct. Yes. So there's certain rules that are certain items in the rules. For instance, how to add an item to the agenda, and certain times it has to be unanimous. For instance, if the council was going to try and add an ordinance, those type of things. And so you definitely want to look at the council rules before you decide on what you want to do. And certainly I'd help through that process. If there's a question as to how to do something, we would look at those council rules and figure out how to go about doing that.
The second thing is, and this happens, well, used to happen often, say Washington County is having an open house on a potential land use issue that they're going to deal with, and 4 of us happen to be there at the same time. How should we handle that? Especially when it's like an on-site. I'll pick up Basalt Creek. That Washington County has a potential meeting out about the proposed Basalt Creek Bridge, and 4 of us are there. How do we handle that?
Yeah, and this is that gray area of kind of information gathering that I kind of talked about. So all of you are citizens, so you'd all have the right to go out and go to another government body's public meeting and listen to the information that's presented. But where that gray area comes in is if you're going to then take that information and use it later in a decision. And so just out of abundance of caution, it's sometimes easier if we know ahead of time that 4 or more counselors are going to attend, that we just notice that as essentially a public meeting that says a quorum of the city council may attend this meeting, and leave it at that. And so that way, at least, that if somebody is attending that meeting and sees the whole council there, that there's that notice that's been given, and that information can be gathered without any issues with relating to the public meetings law.
Thank you. Any other questions for Sean? Thanks.
Wait, sorry.
Go ahead, Valerie. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just started talking. I'm having a difficulty with, if you go to like this meeting Frank just mentioned with Washington County, like, I think you're always gathering information that could possibly be used in the future. So is there a clear way to define that? You just don't know what you might learn there until you get there sometimes.
Yeah, and again, this is that gray area, but I would just say that if the intent is to go there to get information to use towards a decision, that's where it looks like it's more public meetings than not. If you're going there and you learn some things that you may 6 months later remember and say, oh, that I want to use that towards a decision, that's where. But again, there's no clear guidance as to where that line is. But I would just say, what is the intent? If the intent is for the council to use that in a decision, that's where it would look more towards a public meetings violation.
Okay, that is helpful. Thank you.
I think it's also more of a quorum thing. I know
Correct.
in the past, if something like that happened, one of us would make a beeline out of there and wait for one of us to leave, and then you go back in. I saw Maria's hand up.
Another thing that happened to me during the last couple of years, I actually walked away of a meeting it was like I think it was a neighborhood meeting, forget the ICOs, I think it is. And I saw 3 people, I freaked out, I walked out because I didn't want to be, but can you explain that again? Because I told someone, oh, I had to walk out because I saw 3 of you, and then with me it would have been like 4 of us. And then can you, because at the time I didn't understand it. I just saw 3 people that were on console, and I just like left because I was like, this is not, I don't want to get in trouble. So for the new ones, because it happened to me, so I feel like I would like to hear that again, and for everyone to hear, because you don't have to walk away. You can just stay and hang out.
Yeah, so any time 4 or more of you gather together, it's going to equal a quorum. So it kind of checks one box of the public meetings law. And so the question is, what is the purpose for which you are gathering? And if it fits either deliberations or you're gathering information to later deliberate on, that's where the public meetings law violation occurs. So it just kind of depends on what all 4 counselors are there for. So for instance, you're allowed to socially gather. So if you were to just get together and have lunch, but not talk about city business, that's okay. But if you were to get together, have lunch, and talk about city business, that's not okay if there's 4 of you. If there's 3 of you, there's no issue because that's not a quorum. So a lot of times, again, just to make sure that there's that bright line, it's just easier to ask one counselor to step away, and therefore there's no issues with the public meetings law whatsoever. You may, depending on the situation, it may not be legally required, but that gets into kind of the other facts that what the meeting's about and those type of things.
But this doesn't include, like, for instance, at the Juanita Poll, we had a breakfast or a luncheon, and then we can, like, the luncheon or the breakfast was for like a different event, and then can we all like sit in different places and be okay with that? Or, I mean, I just remember that event, another event that I noticed that we were all there, and I was afraid.
Right. So those type of events are generally considered social gatherings, so they wouldn't be public meetings. Again, the risk is that if you kind of all got in the corner and started talking about city business, then that itself is a violation. So sometimes, just to avoid that issue, the recommendation will be either have 3 counselors present, and therefore it's not a public meeting, or the city will just notice it as a public meeting, and then it's okay no matter if you got together and discussed things, as long as it was public. Then that would be okay.
But like Crawfish Festival or Viva Tualatin or the Veterans Breakfast, I mean, all 7 of you can go. You don't even have to sit at different tables. There is a quorum there, but as long as you don't talk city business, I think that falls under the social kind of thing. Just be careful it's perception as well as just be careful not to discuss city business.
Thank you. I really appreciate this.
Nancy.
Thanks. Hi, everybody, by the way. I have a question, Sean, and I don't know if this is a good time to bring it up, but I'm thinking with all the new counselors, they're going to get an enormous amount of communications from community members and different people that have different issues that they care about, that they'll be reaching out to the new counselors to want to talk to them about. Should we talk a little bit or mention like ex parte contact now, or is that too big of a topic at the wrong time?
Yeah, I think we're going to come back at a later meeting and talk about, kind of land use, as well as get into some of the ex parte and bias and those type of things as well. So I think that's scheduled for another meeting. Okay,
thank you. Because I know in the beginning you tend to get kind of like the landslide of communication, and it's tricky.
All right. Any other questions for Sean? I don't see any. Thanks, Sean. I liked how you updated the photos in your slides.
And I will just say that Sean is a great resource. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out and ask.
Definitely. I do.
Absolutely.
Yep. I got Sean on speed dial. All right. So next up, we have sewer and stormwater rates. I'm assuming I see Don here, and I see Nick.
Mayor, I think Cindy had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Nope.
No, thank you, Councilor Pratt. I was just saying thank you for the clapping.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to create confusion, but thank you for recognizing me.
All right. So Don.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and especially welcome to our new council members. Usually I have to follow Parks and Rec, so all that exciting stuff. But tonight that was exciting, Sean. I was one of your better presentations. I actually stayed awake through all of it, so thank you. I don't know if this will make it more exciting or not, but I am here to talk about sewer and stormwater rates. As you remember, back in the budget process, Clean Water Services made their decision not to raise sewer and stormwater rates effective July 1. And they were going to come back in the fall and discuss the potential for raising rates in January. The council at that time chose to follow Clean Water Services' lead, and we delayed our rate increases as well. I'm going to do a real quick share of my screen just to remind you of what our utility bill looks like and what that average bill looks like right now. We did raise water rates and our road utility fee at that time. So our average utility bill went up $1.60. You see the sewer and the stormwater rates stayed the same. Just to remind you that our sewer and stormwater rates, and for the new council members, are split. A portion of that is a regional rate that is set by Clean Water Services, and the other part of the rate is a local rate that the city council adopts. And so you'll see here that we have the regional rate. This is how much clean water we're just passing through for clean water. And this is the share that the city council gets to adopt, and the same down here on stormwater. So on November 23rd, I gave the council an update on the Clean Water Services Board meeting from November 17th and what their discussion was regarding the potential for raising rates on January 1st. The Clean Water Services Board did not have the appetite to raise rates on January 1st and decided to put off any rate increases for sewer and stormwater until July 1st. They also asked their staff to come back and talk about the impacts of that decision and what that would look like for their proposed rates that will go into effect July 1st. They will see about a 1.5% higher increase on the sewer rates based upon their decision to delay for that full year. You had discussion that evening as well about what we wanted to do, and the discussion, there was expressing of concern that evening about if we wait till July 1, what impact would that have on our system, on our customers, and so forth. So we're back tonight to talk about what the impact would be and whether or not you want to look at looking at some rates maybe in February and stagger those out or not. So we did go back and look at what those impacts would be on our sewer rates and our stormwater rates. We reviewed fund balances that are in those funds currently. We reviewed what the proposed rates were based upon for our operational costs as well as capital costs. And we looked at the timing. So our proposed rates are based upon our master plans. We recently had a sewer master plan update a couple of years ago, and there was a rate study that was part of that. And that's where our proposed rates, the percentage that would have gone into effect this July 1, as well as the next few years. In that rate study were our proposed or our estimated beginning fund balances for each year. We looked at what our operational cost projections were going to be, and then what capital projects were proposed, and that's what was the basis for those proposed rates. Fortunately, in the sewer side especially, our beginning fund balances have come in higher than was projected in the master plan rate study, as well as other staff and I looked at the capital projects that were listed in that master plan. There are some of the capital projects that the timing that was proposed at that or projected at that time has been adapted a little differently and changed out a year or so. One of the other big pieces was there's a couple projects down the Basalt Creek area that were projected to be split between the city and Clean Water Services. And we are now showing that that is going to be 100% paid by Clean Water Services. So there will not be a rate impact for those projects. So given all that information that we looked over, I am very comfortable to recommend to the council that we wait until July 1st, if that's your appetite, to do a rate increase. In looking at those numbers, I do not feel at this point that there would be anything higher than what was already proposed in the master plan come July 1st. We will continue looking at that between now and the budget process and come to you with what that rate increase is proposed for July 1st in the sewer fund. But as we sit here today, I don't think it'll be any higher than what was already projected. We looked at that as will not have an impact on our system as a whole. We will still be able to cover our operational costs and the capital projects that we have in right now. Of course, some of the unknowns would be the timing of annexations down the Basalt Creek area. The other potential positive impact would be your discussions coming up on urban renewal. And if there is an urban renewal district that is set up in Basalt Creek area, that some of the potential projects might be funded under urban renewal funds and not rates. But again, that would be something that will, as we go into those discussions here in the future, that will be brought up at that point. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, and hopefully I've given you the information you were looking for to have a discussion tonight and give us any direction.
Thanks, Don. Questions for Don? That's pretty good news. Bless you, Sean. Valerie, I'm sorry, Bridget.
I just want to say thanks for coming back with it, and I'm glad that we have some good news in this time.
And I want to thank the staff. I see a few of them are on here that I met with also this week to kind of talk about and give me that insight that I could then pass on to you guys.
Any other questions, comments for Don? If not, I just asked, do we have the council's agreement that we will postpone raising rates until our next budget meeting and not do any rate increase in February? See, a lot of thumbs up and Nancy with her card. All right. Looks like that's unanimous. Yes, let's go ahead and proceed with your plan, Don.
Great. Thank you.
That's great news. Great news. Thank you.
All right. Next up is council committee assignments. For those folks who don't know, city councilors don't just attend these 2 meetings a month. Each councilor has additional duties as assigned, and those are being representing the city of Tualatin at different organizations and governing bodies throughout both Washington County and Clackamas County. So there are quite a few committee assignments that we divvy up every 2 years so that the city is well represented all over the region so that we make sure the needs of our residents are met. So is Megan or Charlene, you going to throw up the slide of the assignments? And what I'm envisioning is we just go committee by committee. I do have everybody's email who was sent in about their preferences. We have a few dukes, but the rest of them line up pretty well. So this is a open forum, open mic, open floor for all counselors. So we'll start with ARB. Does Council President Grimes, do you want to remain on ARB?
Yes, I would like to, please, if it works with everybody else.
Right. Is there an alternate required for that, Sherlyn?
No, there's not, unless you wanted to designate one. I suppose it might be useful to designate one in case Councilor Grimes is not available, and
Right.
then we could go to the second one.
Let's do that. I mean, because people always go on vacation and stuff like that. So, is there anyone interested in being the alternate for ARB?
I am.
Okay. All right. Next up, Arts Advisory Committee. Bridget has stated she let me already know that she wanted to stay on that. Would someone like to be an alternate for Bridget if she can't make a meeting? I see Nancy.
I'll be an alternate for the Arts Committee.
Okay. But
if there's any of the brand new counselors, if you guys have an interest, don't let us jump all over the top of you.
Yeah. You gotta yell because I can't either see you or hear you. I only see
yes. I
only see a few headshots right now. So just yell. Don't be shy.
Cindy and Kristen, unmute and jump on in.
All right. Budget committee, we're all in, so there are no volunteers for that. Core area parking, I believe I did have a volunteer for that. That was Valerie.
Oh, I could do it too if nobody else wants it or can't make it.
So you want Valerie, you want to be primary and Nancy be alternate?
Sounds good. Great way to spend lunch.
Talking parking, transportation.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. The council committee on advisory appointments. I believe all 3 counselors wanted to stay on that committee, correct?
Correct.
Unless someone wants to be, would really want to be part of that, but I like it. I enjoy that committee.
Right.
Just,
Okay, so Science Technology Scholarship Committee. I know Councilor Reyes wants to come off of it. And I did see, I think Cindy wanted to be on this, correct?
Yes, please.
And I'd like to stay on unless one of the other new counselors wants to pick something up.
All right. And then the next committee is the Clackamas County Business Alliance. Cindy let me know she was interested in that. Anyone else be an alternate? We're gonna let Sydney do it all herself.
I'd be an alternate.
Okay.
I will say on that one that it's like a monthly breakfast forum, and on the second Wednesdays of the month, and as many as want to go can go.
All right. All right. C4, the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee. There was a little confusion with that. Usually the same person represents us at C4 and the C4 subcommittee. And I've got multiple people who were interested in that. Valerie, Maria, and Kristen were all interested in that. I know Valerie hit me up about this quite a while ago.
I was an alternate for that, so if Councilor Morrison didn't attend, I was the alternate person. So
Okay.
I just thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think it ties in with my Stafford liaison work, and I've made a lot of connections with people. So that's the reason I have a really strong interest in this, so I could kind of develop those relationships for our city.
All right. So is it Valerie and Maria or Valerie and Kristen?
Since Valerie and Maria already have legwork done on C4, I'm more than happy then to take a step back.
Okay.
And that's for both the C4 and the subcommittee.
And then Maria stay on the, oh, we're not there yet, but.
Yep. So then Maria, do you want to stay on the tolling committee?
You know what? I don't know. I'm just we've had one meeting, and so I'm still waiting to see what will happen there. So I worked really hard to get to get involved with C4. So yeah, I still want to be part of it. Yeah.
Okay. I think that I'm assuming the tolling meetings will come bubbling back up this year. Because it hasn't gone anywhere with the legislative session just starting. The money's probably not going to magically fall from the sky to fix 205. So I have a feeling you'll be busy with this in the coming year.
Yeah. No, I was just saying for the C4 Metro subcommittee.
We're talking about the tolling committee.
Right, I'm gonna stay on that one, but
Yeah,
I thought.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So you want me to be an alternate for the C4 Metro subcommittee and then the official member for the C4 tolling committee?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Greater Portland Inc. Small Cities Consortium. That's me.
Sorry, do we want to alternate for the tolling subcommittee?
Sure, if someone wants to be it.
What about Kristen?
Yeah, I'll take that as alternate.
Nothing like being volunteered, Kristen. All right. MAC. Councilor Reyes let me know she does not want to be on the MAC. So that's wide open. And
I didn't want to be an alternate anymore either.
okay. So we have a primary and alternate for MAC. Anyone interested? And for the
No one else is
Share a little bit
interested.
more about it, please.
I was going to just say,
yeah, okay.
Sharon, can you review what the MAC does?
Yes, I don't have an official statement here, and Bates actually might be able to chime in. So MAC is the holder of the franchise agreements for for like 14 cities for telecommunications and cable. So the commission meets once a quarter, and unless you're on the executive board, which meets monthly, and they review complaint history and anything franchise related. I don't know what else they review. Bates, could you fill in a little bit?
Yeah, no, you hit it on the head. They administer the grants. They speak with as the contracts come up for renegotiation. They speak with local entities who want into the area or deal with, like you said, complaints about the area.
And the MAC is the agency that deals primarily with Comcast and Ziply, basically your big cable providers. So they're the ones that take on the big cable companies, if you will, when it comes to franchise fees and contracts. So it's a fairly important commission for one to have our city represented on.
So can I propose something?
Sure.
So why don't I just, you know how you have me for the alternate on Clackamas County Coordinating Committee? Maybe have someone else there, and I'll just continue being serving on that committee. And then also for the C4 Metro subcommittee, maybe that someone else can be the alternate for those two, and I can continue being the metro area communications, because I am kind of familiar with it. It's just that my schedule was a little funky. That's why I was having a hard time, but I can probably work that out.
Well, and I'm fine to stay on the MAC as the alternate if there's no other people that are interested.
It is really interesting if you're new. Yeah, if you're new, it talks about all the negotiations of our communications, including that camera that's on a bonito pole that projects to everyone. And you have a great staff member like Bates hanging out with you when you go to this meeting, so you're not alone. But you can, it's a good committee. It's just my schedule is really hard to be there at 1:30.
Yeah.
So
that's why you have an alternate. So if you can't make it.
But if anyone is interested, I'm not want to post, not let it go. I just say, if you're confused about what it means.
So Valerie, you still want to be alternate, or?
Yeah, if nobody else is interested, I think it's important that someone attends these meetings, so that's fine.
I could be an alternate also if you feel loaded up, Valerie.
Yeah, it's just hard for me to get out there. I mean, I don't like to take it, you have to drive a ways out to Hillsborough.
Yeah.
Well, not now, but in the future, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, as a telecommunications, sorry.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Go ahead, Cindy.
I just wonder, they are the tech people. Will they not have the opportunity to meet in person and virtually at the same time? A lot of groups, as I understand it, are going to move to that because our county is, such a big place. So does that break down a barrier at all?
Well, they don't operate in a tech way, even though they are the tech committee.
Yeah. Unless they're going to get me phone service in my office. I don't know. No, I'm kidding.
For me, it's more the schedule that I was having a hard time at 1:30. So, but definitely it's a good committee. We have to have someone there to represent us.
And didn't you ask about being on the C4 committee? Do you want to be the alternate now?
Yeah, I'll be the alternate there. And I was just worried about, and I'm sorry I didn't throw my name in the hat for the MACC, but I was afraid of a conflict of interest. My husband works for Comcast, and so I don't know if that'd be a good place for me. But I think the alternate for the C4, that would work.
Okay.
All right.
So Nancy, were you interested as alternate for MAC, or?
I can be if we need somebody. I work at a television station, so but I
can be an alternate if I can be an alternate if that
Okay.
is needed.
You
I
can-
mean,
Yeah.
You can always disclaim that and say conflict of interest or potential, I mean, before you vote or anything like that. I mean, there's always.
Well, why don't we put Cindy in if she's interested?
Cindy volunteered. Too late.
Yeah, right. You said okay.
And there's
you
also
put
on that
alternate,
committee,
right?
Yeah,
they
that's
also
an
have to
alternate, yeah.
do, they also have like a public service that they have to do for that committee too. Like
Mhm.
they have a certain amount of like, cable access,
Mhm.
putting money behind community stuff. So that would be a good thing, Cindy, to kind of hold their feet to the fire for us.
Okay.
I'm not.
So we're up to Metro Mayors Consortium. That's me. Regional Water Providers Consortium. Bridget told me yes, she wants to stay on that. WACA. So WACA is the 911 agency. So when people call 911, this is the agency that is
Hey,
responsible for
Frank,
answering the phone. Go ahead.
for the Water Providers Consortium, should we have an alternate?
Sure.
And then can we talk about the other one at the same
Yeah.
time, please? So
Right.
what I would like to do, the Willamette River Water Coalition, I'm on that one, and I would like to move off of that one. I have a conflict, a new conflict, a time conflict, but I would love for whoever takes it on to be the alternate for the Regional Water Providers Consortium and work together on that.
So Kristen emailed me saying she was interested in Willamette River.
Oh, good. Yes.
So
So,
does that sound good for you, Kristen, to be the primary there and be the alternate or regional?
Yep.
okay, fabulous. I'm looking forward to it, Kristen.
Me too.
All right.
Mayor,
So-
I have another change again. Sorry. I just feel like I don't want to like confuse all of us, but when it comes to that Clackamas County sub C4, if it's going to be one person, I mean, you're going to have the same primary contact and then the same alternate. Why don't you just go ahead and have all of them to be, because they do talk about almost the same thing and it's the same person sending out that information. So I feel like it's kind of weird that you have Pratt, Sacco, and then me all of a sudden come in, and then so it's just might as well have Pratt and Sacco do all three of them.
Are you sure? Because that's the tolling subcommittee. Maybe, I don't know.
But it's just I've been to the committee, to the meetings, and it's really similar to what they. I don't know. I just feel like
Well,
I'll be on all of them.
but that's fine if.
I don't know. I'm just saying that it's just kind of like
Yeah, I know what you're
the
saying.
water, maybe be in the same area. I mean, it just be too. I don't know. I just feel like it should be that way since they all kind of connect the same way. They'll have similar conversations.
Well, I'd be more than glad to be on that tolling subcommittee.
Oh yeah. Barry loves that. Just as much as former.
I might not be well loved, but I will.
All right.
Go
All right.
get
So we're
them.
down to we just
God, is that a
did.
word?
Did we pick Wacko already?
No, that's where we're at, and
Okay.
I'll stay on that one.
I would like to give up being an alternate on that.
So who would like to be the alternate for Wacko?
I'll be the alternate for that.
All right. Okay, so Washington County Coordinating is I'm primary. I do need an alternate.
I would like to be an alternate on that.
All right. All right, page 2, Washington County Mayors, that's me. The PAB, I know Bridget wants to stay on that. Whoa.
I'm interested in that one as well.
Yeah, you can be the alternate, Cindy, because I'm willing to give that up. And I think I was going to actually suggest you. So.
Yeah, I work a lot with people at Washington County And so that would be
Yeah, that's a very
great.
informative, great meeting when.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Westside Economic Alliance. That one I probably need an alternate too, because I know sometimes I look at Tigard and it's either Mayor Snyder or John Goodhouse that attends. So anyway, they meet.
I'd be willing to do that one.
Okay, so Valerie, you're it.
Okay.
First one who puts their hands up wins.
But
And so we
sometimes you
got-
can't see us, Mayor. So
what's that?
sometimes you can't see us. So
Yeah.
you,
So and then we got Kristen's on Willamette River. That I think that covers it, doesn't it, Charlotte? We got them all.
We need an alternate for that one.
For the last one.
It
Tuesday from 5 to
realistically, it should probably be Bridget.
I just have a conflict, or I
Oh,
would.
you have a conflict. Okay.
I can't do it. I'm sorry. If someone is, one of the things that's happening with this, it's our emergency water. There's a conversation around the temperature of the Willamette. So if that's, if those kinds of environmental concerns are interesting to you, it's also, when it's in person, it's a close by meeting.
Okay. Cindy, were you interested in being the alternate for the Westside Economic Alliance?
I am fourth Wednesday at 7:30. I could do the alternate for either that or the river. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, I
Val?
think I'll do the river
Councilor
because
Pratt, I'm sorry. It makes sense for Councilor Pratt for you to do that. Yes. No,
So
it's okay. I'm practicing. So
Yeah,
it makes good sense, and because of all your leadership there. So I think that makes great sense, Councilor Pratt.
Which one?
For you to be with the river, but
Yeah,
the Willamette
so,
River, but you do what you want.
No, I somewhat have to limit these morning meetings. So if you could do the Westside Economic Alliance, the River Coalition.
That works. That would work in my schedule. Yes, the Merrill. Yeah, great, wonderful.
We did it.
All right.
No,
Everyone
so-
good with it?
I'll stop sharing my screen, but what I will do is put together the list of who signed up for what under each of your names, so that, and then if something is out of whack, you can maybe come back at the next council meeting if you want to readjust, if that wasn't exactly what you were looking for. So I'll send that back out.
Great, terrific. Let's see where we at. We just got that done. We're on item 4, council meeting, agenda review, communications, and roundtable. So at this point of the meeting is where I asked folks to take a look, if you haven't already, hopefully you did, look at the city council meeting agenda and make sure it's what you thought it was going to be, and specifically on the consent agenda. The consent agenda for new councilors is something that we review and vote on usually all in one motion, but individual councilors can ask to have a resolution or an item on the consent agenda removed and basically spoken about or discussed separately later on in the meeting. So does anyone have any questions or concerns with items in the consent agenda? I don't see anybody's heads. All right. Terrific. Okay. And so what a tradition we started 2 years ago is council communications, where it's an open roundtable. We go from councilor to councilor to discuss meetings they attended, things they've heard. If they have questions, we spend, what I have to try to do this in this term is limited to about 5 minutes each, because we're limited to about a half hour. And I just go in the row, I go in the order of the pictures I see on my screen at this point versus going from the dais. So tonight I'll start with one of our new counselors, Cindy Hillier. Welcome. You're up. Anything
Good
you'd like?
evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah. Thank you. No, I am honored to be here. I appreciate the time and energy that everyone has put into helping prepare myself and Kristen for this. So we had a wonderful, I say installation, but swearing in the other night, and it was, we missed you all, but we know that you were there in spirit because we saw your post. So thank you very much for that. So anything that I know that's coming up is really, I know that there is a community meeting and a community survey that is out with Tualatin Together because I'm doing it. And so you're all invited to a community meeting at noon on September the 21st. There is a survey around, it'll take about 3 to 5 minutes. If you're interested, you can go to our website and register at tualatintogether.org. And I know there's probably more, and I look forward to these assignments. I'm super excited about where they are. I'm looking forward to tomorrow morning's chamber event, and I'm glad that I will not be there alone. So thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. Moving across the screen here, Valerie.
I think you should have picked on Kristen first, but that's okay. Well, I think Cindy understated it. I know her and Kristen have been super busy because we attended the National League of Cities new counselors thing. And then I think you both were at the one the next day too, from the Portland State. We did all three of us attended the CIO president's meeting, which was really interesting. And we got to learn about them too. And the one thing I do remember from that is that a couple of the CIO presidents have a concern about the gun club, which hopefully the efforts they're making will help mitigate that noise, but we'll see. Then one thing I did was I attended the Westland-Wilsonville hearing because they wanted to put a 12,000 square foot storage unit right on by the river behind Athey Creek School. So I spoke to them on personally with the support of the mayor and former Councilor Kellogg, just that was probably not the best and wisest use of the land. Then Mayor Bubenik and former Councilor Kellogg and we attended a third-party IGA meeting, which is an intergovernmental agreement where we meet with representatives from Lake Oswego and Westland, and we had a discussion about doing a traffic and infrastructure and topography type study that I believe Metro would pay for, but there wasn't a willingness to go forward at this time from the two other cities. So hopefully we'll be visiting that again later in this year. We did the CCA, the Committee on Advisory Appointments. I don't want to say that wrong and offend Councilor Reyes, so we'll talk about that later. And again, we did our swearing in, and it was fast and easy, and we didn't have to give a speech, so it was kind of nice. It was awesome to see everybody. I also wanted, I was hoping we did this during council, but we're not, because I really wanted to make a statement, an anti-violence statement, but I really appreciate what the mayors did.
Bridget.
Well, hi, everybody. Welcome aboard to the new counselors, and welcome back, Counselor Pratt. And congratulations on your election. I think for me, just an update. One of the things that I'm the only elected that's on the local implementation planning committee for the Metro Housing Bond for Washington County. And it's a privilege to serve there. We just finished the first phase of that planning committee, and there's a draft proposal that we have put forward, but I didn't really want to share it until the not draft proposal. So, but just expect that to be coming. There is going to be another phase that I'm going to be involved in as well. And that will only be a few meetings monthly through March. So I'm just really proud of that work and grateful for the ask from some of the members of the PAB board. And speaking of the PAB board, it's good for you guys to know that we are going to be doing the reviewing of the applicants we manage the grants for the home grant and the community development block grant. And one of the exciting things that are happening is that there's an application for a $1,200,000 grant from the Community Partners for Affordable Housing for the Basalt Creek area. And I just want to thank Mayor Frank. He worked on this and chaired this committee before I jumped on, and has been working on getting affordable housing options in our city. And so hopefully something happens at our meeting. We will find out soon. We just do proposals at the next meeting, so we won't have the information by the time that we meet next time, but I thought you guys would want to be aware of that. There's also a list of people, of different organizations that are applying for the Community Development Block Grants as well. And then the Regional Water Providers Consortium, I just encourage people to check, click on their website, and they have a newsletter that comes out, the Regional Water News. I'm going to briefly go over that during the regular council communications. And they also have a Facebook page. So if you're interested in emergency preparedness, water conservation, protecting our water, and protecting ourselves with water, that would be something that you might be interested in checking out. There's also links to from our website to the Regional Water News. And I'll save that for later. Another piece of the LIT program, I just want to thank, well, I'm going to save that for another part. Sorry. And I just want to also note that we had constituents reach out about the progress on the backyard habitat program that's done by the Audubon Society. We're recently added in as a city, and so you guys might want to know that. And 400 sites were certified last year, and Tualatin now is a silver level. So it goes from in progress to silver to gold to platinum. So it'd be great to see us raise up in that, and people that have been certified or are in the process of being certified, we're on a very long waiting list and are super excited about being certified or having people come out to their yards. I think that's pretty much it. I just want to also thank Councilor Pratt and Councilor Reyes for working so well together. We went through a lot of applications for the budget committee, and I just enjoy working well together with both of you.
All right. Thanks, Bridget. Kristen.
Hello, everybody. So I haven't obviously been exposed to a lot, but I do feel like we have already been diving into so much in the past couple months. And as Cindy and Valerie have previously stated, we attended a couple meetings with PSU and the National League of Cities to get us prepared for council. And I also just wanted to say thank you for everyone for reaching out and really welcoming us and preparing us for our new positions. I already feel like I've been part of the council for weeks now because of all of that. So I really appreciate it. So I feel prepared and I'm ready to get started. So thank you, everybody. I'm so grateful to be here.
Perfect. Welcome. Maria.
Hey, everyone. Happy New Year to those that I haven't seen since last year, a couple weeks ago. So first of all, we had our council advisory committee assignments last Monday, and it went really well. We had great, oh my gosh, we had a long list of people that wanted to be part of the budget committee. So it was really hard to choose. There was just wonderful and well-qualified candidates that really, we really had to, it was hard to choose 3 people. So we had about 16 or 15 people, and great candidates. So that was a really good start of the year. I'm just meeting. I always meet great people during these meetings, or we just kind of refresh, that memory of, oh, hey, I've seen you before, kind of thing. So it was a good meeting. And then I also attended the Washington County consolidated. I always call it the 911 meeting because it's just easier for me to remember. But I attended last Thursday. They actually hire a new executive director. So we talked a little bit about that. And we elected a new chair since Mayor Doyle is no longer part of the I think he's not a mayor anymore because his term ended already. But so we selected Chief Kincaid or Kincaid. I can't remember exactly his name, but Kincaided, or it's kind of hard. But he's going to be our new chair, and just looking forward to going to those meetings again. And it was a very positive meeting. So very it's an interesting meeting because we talked about safety and emergency response, and of course that's pretty freshly on our minds right now. So looking forward to seeing more and more of that, and attending those committees. That's just basically all that I've got in the last couple of weeks.
Thanks,
Thank
Maria.
you.
Council President Nancy.
Good evening. I haven't had any meetings, outside meetings since the last council meeting, but like Maria, I wanted to wish everyone a happy new year and welcome our new counselors. So glad you are here. And I'm so proud that you stood up and put yourselves forward. And it's a little uncomfortable sometimes to put yourself out there in the beginning, but when you feel strongly about something and you have a passion for the community, it tends to work out fantastic. And I am so honored to serve with the both of you, and I'm looking forward to the next 2 years. And I welcome you. And if there's any help that we can ever extend, please let me know and let the rest of us know. I think we've always been a wonderful team that's worked very well together. We bring different backgrounds and different opinions sometimes, but we always have one thing in common, and that's the city and all of our best wishes to do the very best job we can for our city. So I'm just so thrilled that you're here, and I'm looking forward to the advance at the end of the month, and I'm looking forward to working very hard with you guys in the coming months. So welcome.
All right. Thanks, Nancy. All right. I neglected to mention there's 2 agenda changes, or audibles, if you will, that I'd like to do. So before we get into announcements, I'd like Cindy, Kristen, and Valerie to either introduce or reintroduce themselves to the community. So I'll start with Kristen, then Cindy, then Valerie, giving you a few minutes to make a statement, introduce yourselves to the community. The second change I'd like to do is just an augmentation on our movement of silence for those who've lost their lives to COVID-19. I'd also like to include the 2 Capitol police officers in that moment of silence, Brian Sicknick and Howard Liebengood. Both Capitol officers passed away in these days since the protest / violence, insurrection, the event we're all aghast at from last week. So I'd like to include those 2 officers if that's okay with folks. All right. Meetings for me was an interesting meeting. Was I gave the year that was presentation to the Tualatin Rotary on the 6th. It was amazing how much stuff happened in 2020 besides COVID. Of course, the biggest part of the discussion was how the city pivoted, reacted to COVID, and responded to the city the needs of residents and businesses. But there's a lot of other things we did over the year. I want to thank Megan George for helping me with the PowerPoint presentation, because in the event we do a state of the city, we've got a terrific start. If you almost all of it done. We just got expanded out from 15 minutes to a little bit longer, but she did a terrific job with that. I enjoyed attending the swearing in on the 7th. It was fast. I was surprised how fast it was. Our justice moved it along. So congratulations again for all three of you. I sent you the PowerPoint from the Washington County Mayor's lunch back in the day when it was a lunch, with the latest economic status report from Oregon Employment Department for Washington County. Some interesting stats in there as I passed along that, transportation hiring continues to be very, very high compared to the rest of the industries in Washington County. No surprise that females in Washington County have a higher unemployment rate than males, primarily due to COVID and taking care of their children. And that Washington County is doing better off than Multnomah County as far as unemployment. Washington County has a much lower unemployment rate than Multnomah County. So if you get a chance, like Valerie said, I think about all the emails that we get, take a look at that. I sent those to you. Today was Washington County Coordinating Committee. Two items of interest there's the MSTIP project list. Back in 2015, Washington County proposed a bond measure that collected about $140 million for 20 projects, primarily in Western Washington County. For those areas that are going to expand, the UGB was going to expand to pay for transportation. Today, there was a change to swap out 2 projects, that the Century Boulevard project, which is in South Hillsborough, is being swapped out for a Cornelius Pass Road Bridge, both in the Butternut Creek area. The Hillsborough city folks think a lot of the funding could be raised from developer fees to pay for the Century Boulevard, whereas Cornelius Pass Road cannot. So that was approved to make that substitution. The second thing is the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund, or STIF. Get used to all these acronyms, Kristen and Cindy, they're just endless. That is the funding mechanism that helps pay for regional coordination, otherwise known as the shuttle services here in Tualatin, over in Forest Grove. The county reviewed the funding for the next 2 years. It's at $1.3 million for each of the next 2 years, which we requested an increase from the state for that, but it was denied. But it's better than a budget cut. The next biennium planning will start in late 2021, and that's just a heads up for Sherilyn, because the takeaway from the testimony that we gave at it's called HB 2017 subcommittee that is headed by TriMet, is we were one of the few cities that came in there and strongly advocated for money. The monies that are raised by the HB 2017 usually stay within Multnomah County and are very Portland centric. But between Garrett, myself, Susan Nowak, and a few other folk, the Tualatin Chamber, we were there 2 or 3 meetings, making a big request to make sure our east-west shuttle got funded to get folks down Borland Road, in addition to maintaining the services we already have. Washington County said that made a huge difference because it's the first time in years that Washington County got any love. So want to let you know about that. I sent you the MMC, or Metropolitan Mayors Consortium letter, the final draft, condemning what happened on Wednesday. That was released to the media late Friday. And finally, Greater Portland Inc., which is the economic development agency, if you will, for the region. We are members of what's called the Small Cities Consortium. So the smaller cities have banded together that pay a smaller chunk of dues to be represented at GPI. The good news here is we've been in it for years. Back in the day, Mayor Ogden was the chair of this committee. When I took Mayor Ogden's place, that went to Mayor Knapp. But the good news is that I was elected chair of the Small Cities Consortium. So Tualatin now takes over again the GPI Small Cities Consortium chair seat, and John Goodhouse will be my alternate from Tiger. Bad news is Jonathan Crane has more work. Because Jonathan Taylor, this is what I say, Crane, Jonathan Taylor has more work because Jonathan will be my right-hand guy for all items when it comes to economic development in the region. So good news for me, bad news for him.
Well, it's an honor to support you in that.
Good with it.
Yeah, it's an honor to support you in that, Mayor.
Right. Anything else for the good of the order tonight before we take a break? All right. That being said, I'll go ahead and close our work session. And we have about a 20-minute break. Go ahead, get some refreshments, take a potty break, and we'll start our regular meeting at 7 o'clock.